The deep black of space stretched endlessly beyond the armored windows of the TNS Valor. Stars blinked like distant candles, cold and silent. Captain Dax Mercer stood on the command deck, his arms crossed behind his back. He stared out into the void, but his mind was not on the stars. His thoughts were on the message he had received earlier that day. It had come without warning. A direct transmission from the Virexi Dominion, cold, clear, and terrifying in its simplicity. You will surrender all claimed systems beyond your soul borders. You will withdraw your fleets. You will kneel before the Virexi Dominion, or you will face complete destruction. Dax had listened to those words over and over again. The voice was mechanical, translated through the ship's language systems. But the threat behind the words was clear. The Virexi had noticed humanity's rise, and they were ready to strike. Dax turned away from the window. His officers stood waiting by the navigation console. Commander Lee, his second-in-command, watched him with sharp eyes. "They're serious," Lee said quietly. A full Dominion fleet was detected crossing into the outer systems just hours ago. Dax nodded. "How many ships?" "Over 200, sir. Heavy carriers. Warships. Bigger than anything we've seen before." Dax felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. 200 Virexi warships. More than enough to crush any colony in their path. More than enough to break through to Earth itself. A sharp tone rang out on the deck. A priority signal. High Command was calling. Dax moved quickly to the main console and opened the secure channel. The face of Admiral Reeve appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked tired. His hair was gray, his face lined with stress. "Captain Mercer," Reeve began without wasting time, "I assume you've received the Dominion's message." "Yes, sir," Dax replied. Reeve leaned forward. "The Council has reviewed the situation. We are not surrendering. We've come too far to turn back now." Dax expected this, but it still hit him hard. "What are my orders, sir?" "You are to hold the line at Caldera Prime," Reeve said firmly. "The Dominion will strike there first. You must protect the planet at all costs. If we lose Caldera, we lose control of the Outer Rim." Dax knew what that meant. Caldera Prime was the largest military base in human space beyond Sol. It held shipyards, command centers, and millions of civilians who had come to build a new future. "Understand," Dax replied, keeping his voice steady. Reeve's face softened slightly. "We don't expect you to hold forever, Dax. Just long enough for the rest of the fleet to regroup." Dax gave a slow nod. "I'll buy us the time, Admiral. I promise." Reeve ended the call without another word. Dax turned back to his crew. "Set course for Caldera Prime. Maximum speed." The officers moved quickly to obey. Engines roared to life, and the Valor surged forward into the stars. Hours passed in tense silence as the ship approached Caldera. When they arrived, Dax stood again at the window. Below, the planet glowed blue and green, covered in vast cities and starports. Dozens of human warships were already in position, forming defensive lines. Commander Lee stepped beside him. "We'll be outnumbered, won't we?" Dax nodded. "Yes, but they'll have to bleed for every inch they take." Lee gave a small, grim smile. "We'll make them bleed, sir." Before Dax could respond, another signal flashed on the console. This one came from deep space. It was unencrypted, a direct message to the Valor alone. Dax accepted it, and the face of High Lord Zorik Vel appeared on the screen. Dax felt a chill run down his spine. Zorik's skin was dark blue, marked with strange patterns that shifted like flowing ink. His yellow eyes were sharp and cold. His voice, translated again through the ship's systems, was steady and clear. "Captain Mercer," Zorik said, "do you understand the mistake your people have made?" Dax stood. "The only mistake we made was thinking you would leave us in peace." Zorik tilted his head slightly. "You have spread like fire through the dark. You threaten the balance of this galaxy. Stand down now, and I will spare your people." Dax clenched his jaw. His crew watched in silence. Every word hung heavy in the air. "No," Dax said. "We will not bow." Zorik's expression did not change. "Then you will burn." The screen went dark. Dax turned back to his crew. "Ready all weapons. Prepare for battle. This war begins here." Far beyond the planet, the Virexi fleet emerged from the shadows. The battle for humanity had begun. The alarms echoed across every deck of the TNS Valor. Red lights flashed, and the voice of the ship's AI spoke over the speakers, loud and steady. All hands to battle stations. Enemy fleet detected. All hands to battle stations. Captain Dax Mercer stood on the command deck, watching the massive tactical display. Hundreds of red markers lit up the screen. The Virexi fleet was bigger than anyone had imagined. They filled the dark space beyond Caldera Prime like a moving wall of death. "Report," Dax ordered. Commander Lee answered quickly. 212 confirmed ships. Multiple heavy carriers, destroyers, and unknown warship classes. "They're moving fast, sir." Straight toward the defense line. Dax nodded. "Open a channel to the fleet." The communications officer gave a signal. The channel was live. Dax spoke firmly. "This is Captain Mercer of the TNS Valor. You all see what's coming. You all know what's at stake. We hold this line, or humanity falls. There's no going back. Fight hard. Fight smart. And don't give him a single inch." He cut the transmission and turned to his officers. His voice dropped to a hard, focused tone. "Launch all fighters. Bring the fleet into formation. I want every gun ready." The crew moved fast. Across the defense line, human warships adjusted their positions. Fighters launched from hangars, filling the space between the two fleets. Then the first Virexi ships opened fire. Massive energy blasts streaked across space. Bright flashes lit up the darkness. Human ships returned fire. The two sides clashed like waves, crashing into each other. The Valor shook as enemy fire hit its shields. "Shields holding at 80%, Lee reported, returning fire with main cannons. The Valor fired back, its heavy plasma cannons tearing through a Virexi destroyer. The enemy ship broke apart in a silent explosion. But more came, filling the gaps left by the fallen. On the front lines, smaller human ships were the first to fall. One by one, they broke under the Virexi's heavy assault. Each loss cut deep. Dax could feel it. "Reinforce the left flank." Dax shouted. "If they break through there, they'll hit the planet." The crew obeyed, sending ships to plug the gap. But the Virexi were relentless. Their ships pressed forward, ignoring their own losses. They had come to crush humanity, and they showed no mercy. A transmission came through. It was Admiral Reeve, his face tense and strained. "Mercer, we can't hold them much longer. You need to pull back." Dax looked at the display. The defense line was breaking. But if they pulled back now, Caldera's surface will be left wide open. "Negative, Admiral," Dax replied. "We hold the line until the last ship." Reeve didn't argue. He simply nodded and ended the call. Dax gripped the edge of the console. His crew watched him, waiting for his command. He knew what he had to do. "Take the Valor forward," Dax said. "We'll lead the charge." Lee's eyes widened. "Sir, we'll be exposed." Dax nodded. "I know. Do it." The Valor surged ahead, pushing toward the heart of the Virexi fleet. Other human ships followed, inspired by the bold move. The enemy didn't expect it. The sudden charge caught them off guard. The Valor's cannons fired nonstop, ripping through enemy ships at close range. Fighters swarmed around them, clearing the path. The ship shook again, harder this time. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Systems flickered. Shields down to 40%. Lee shouted, "Keep going." Dax ordered. Another enemy ship exploded in front of them. The way to the enemy carriers was open. "This is our chance," Dax said. "Target their lead carrier. All weapons, fire." The Valor unleashed everything it had. Missile, plasma bolt, railgun. The enemy carrier's shields collapsed under the barrage. Its hull cracked, then shattered in a bright, silent explosion. The shockwaves scattered nearby Virexi ships. The enemy fleet started to break formation. Some began to fall back. Cheers erupted on the Valor's deck. But Dax didn't smile. He knew it wasn't over. "Status?" he asked. Lee checked the readings. "We've pushed them back, but we lost nearly half the fleet. Caldera is safe for now." Dax let out a slow breath. The price had been high. Too high. "Start recovery operations," Dax said quietly. "Pick up survivors. Get the wounded to medical." The crew got to work, but the mood was heavy. There was no celebration. only quiet relief and the weight of what had just happened. Dax walked toward the window. Outside, the wreckage of hundreds of ships floated in space. Fires burned in the distance. The defense line had held, but just barely. Commander Lee joined him. "We made them bleed, sir." Dax nodded, but his heart felt heavy. "They'll be back," he said softly. "And next time, they won't hold back." He looked out at the stars, knowing the war had only just begun. The fires still burned across the wreckage fields above Caldera Prime. For 3 days, Captain Dax Mercer stood at the center of it all. His ship, the TNS Valor, remained in orbit as crews worked non-stop to recover survivors, repair damaged vessels, and count the dead. The battle was over, but its shadow hung heavy on everyone. Dax watched from the observation deck as shuttles moved between broken ships, carrying wounded soldiers and bodies wrapped in gray sheets. It was the part of war no one talked about, the part where leaders were left to face the cost of their decisions. He had ordered that charge. He had pushed the fleet forward. They had won, but nearly half the defense force was gone, and that guilt pressed on him like a weight that wouldn't lift. Later, Dax walked through the medical bay. Rows of injured crew members lay in beds, some hooked to life support, others sitting quietly, staring at nothing. Doctors moved quickly between them, treating burns, broken bones, and worse. He stopped by one bed. A young pilot, barely 20, lay there with his face wrapped in bandages. His name was Ethan Cole. Dax remembered him from the mission briefing days ago. Full of energy, full of hope. Now he lay silent, his body shaking from pain. Dax leaned down and placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. Ethan opened one and tried to sit up, but Dax gently stopped him. "You did get out there, Lieutenant," Dax said quietly. Ethan swallowed hard and whispered, "Did we win?" Dax wanted to say yes. He wanted to tell the young pilot that it had all been worth it, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't lie. "We're still here," Dax said instead. "And that's enough for now." Ethan nodded weakly and closed his eye again. Dax stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked out of the bay. The image of the boy's face stayed with him. Back on the command deck, Commander Lee waited with a report. "Fleet losses confirmed," Lee said. 42 ships destroyed. Tens of thousands dead. Dax took the datapad without a word. "There's more," Lee continued. "Admiral Reeve is on a secure channel. He wants to speak with you." Dax nodded slowly. "Put him through." The Admiral's face appeared on the screen again, just as tired as before. "You did well, Captain," Reeve said. "Better than anyone expected." Dax didn't feel like he had done well. "We lost too much." Reeve leaned forward. "We bought time. That's what matters." Dax tightened his grip on the datapad. "How long before the Dominion comes back?" Reeve shook his head. "Not long. Our scouts say they're regrouping. Their supply lines are still strong. We can't win if they keep sending more fleets." Dax knew where this was going. "You want me to go after their supplies?" Reeve nodded. "Exactly. We've identified a major fuel station deep in their territory. If we hit it, we might slow them down long enough to rebuild our forces." "It's suicide," Dax said. "They'll be waiting." Reeve sighed. "I won't lie to you, Dax. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot we've got." Dax looked out the window again. The wreckage, the injured, the dead. All of it flashed through his mind. "I'll do it," Dax said firmly. "But I'll need the best crew you can spare." Reeve nodded. "You'll have them. Pick your team and move fast. Time's running out." The screen went dark. Dax turned back to Lee. "Get the senior officers in the war room. We're planning a strike." Hours later, the war room buzzed with quiet conversation. Officers stood around a large tactical display showing Dominion space. Red markers outlined the Virexi's supply routes. At the center was their fuel station, located in a system called Varnes 12. Dax pointed at the target. "This is where we hit them. We go in fast, hit hard, and get out before they catch us." The room went silent for a moment. Everyone knew how dangerous it was, but they also knew it had to be done. Lee broke the silence. "What's the plan if they're waiting for us?" Dax looked around the room. His voice was steady. "Then we fight our way through." The next day, the TNS Valor prepared for the mission. A small strike force of 5 ships gathered in formation. These were fast, well-armed ships, handpicked for the job. As the crews finished final checks, Dax stood before his team in the hangar bay. He looked each of them in the eye. Pilots, engineers, soldiers, men and women ready to risk their lives for something bigger than themselves. Dax spoke clearly, his voice strong. We are not here to die. We are here to make sure humanity lives. Every second we buy gives the rest of our people a chance to survive. This is our duty. This is our fight. And we will see it through. No one cheered. No one smiled. But every person in that hangar stood a little taller. They were ready. Dax turned to Lee. Take us out. Engines roared to life. The small strike force moved away from Caldera Prime and set course for the heart of Dominion space. As the stars stretched into long, bright lines, Dax stood at the window once more. He knew the risks. He knew the cost. But he also knew this was the only way forward. The TNS Valor moved through the dark space between stars, silent and unseen. The strike force stayed in tight formation, engines running low to avoid detection. They were deep in Dominion space now. One wrong move, one mistake, and the Virexi would find them. If that happened, they wouldn't stand a chance. Captain Dax Mercer stood on the command deck, watching the navigation display. The target was close. Varney's 12, a gas giant surrounded by rings of fuel stations and enemy patrols. If they could destroy it, the Virexi fleets would be stranded, at least for a while. Commander Lee stepped up beside him. We're approaching the edge of the system, Captain. Long-range scanners picking up movement. Dax nodded. Let's see what we're dealing with. The display zoomed in. The fuel station floated in the gas giant's orbit, protected by several defense platforms. Around it, smaller ships patrolled in slow patterns. Looks quiet, Lee said, frowning. Too quiet. Dax agreed. The Virexi weren't sloppy. They had to know someone would come after their supply lines. This felt like a trap, but they had no choice. They had to take the risk. Dax opened a secure channel to the strike force. All ships, this is Mercer. We going fast. Weapons hot. Break the station's core and fall back to jump range. Do not engage the patrol ships unless you have to. We're here to hit the station, not fight their fleet. He gave a small pause, then added, Good luck. See you on the other side. The attack began with complete silence. The Valor and the other 4 ships powered up their engines and broke formation, rushing toward the fuel station at full speed. They stayed low, using the rings of the gas giant to hide their approach. But the Virexi were ready. Dozens of hidden turrets activated on the station surface. Red beams of energy fired in all directions. The Valor shook as enemy blasts struck its shields. Shields holding, Lee shouted. But they know we're here now. Push through, Dax ordered. The strike force returned fire, blasting the turrets one by one. The Valor led the charge, cutting a path through the station's defenses. One of the smaller ships, the TNS Hammer, took a direct hit. Its engines exploded, sending debris spinning into space. Dax gritted his teeth. He couldn't stop. Not now. Target the station's core, Dax commanded. Fire everything. The Valor's main cannons lit up, sending a storm of plasma bolts toward the station's power core. The other ships joined in. The core's shield flickered, then collapsed. A massive explosion rocked the station. Flames and debris scattered across the gas giant's rings. For a moment, it looked like they had succeeded. But then the enemy fleet arrived. Dozens of Virexi warships dropped out of fold space, surrounding the strike force. Their engines glowed like blue fire. Their weapons lit up, locking onto the human ships. They were waiting for us, Lee whispered. Dax's heart pounded. There was no way out. They had walked straight into the trap. Prepare for emergency jump, Dax ordered. All ships, fall back to jump range. Now, the remaining human ships turned sharply, engines burning as they raced away from the wreckage. Enemy fire chased them, hitting their shields again and again. The Valor shook hard as another blast struck its rear engines. Engines failing, the chief engineer shouted. We won't make it to jump range. Dax's mind raced. They couldn't outrun the Virexi. But maybe they didn't have to. He turned to Lee. Prepare the self-destruct on the damaged ship, TNS Blade. We'll trigger it behind us and use the blast as cover. Lee's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. She relayed the command. The blade fell back behind the other ships. Its crew had already abandoned ship during the station attack. The empty ship drifted into the enemy's path. Now, Dax shouted. The blade exploded in a massive fireball, blinding the Virexi's sensors for a few precious seconds. Punch the jump, Dax ordered. The Valor and the two remaining ships activated their full drives. The stars stretched into long lines as they tore through space, leaving the burning station and the enemy fleet behind. The Valor reappeared in open space, far from the Virexi's reach. The ship was damaged but alive. Dax leaned against the console, breathing hard. Lee turned to him. We lost 2 ships, but the station is gone. Dax nodded slowly. It's something. It wasn't a victory. Not really. But it was enough to hurt the Dominion. Enough to buy humanity a little more time. Dax stood straight. Give me a line to High Command. They need to know we're still in this fight. Lee gave a tired smile. Yes, sir. As the crew began repairs, Dax walked back to the window. The stars seemed closer now, like they were watching. He knew this mission had cost them more than ships and lives. It had shown the Virexi that humanity wasn't afraid to strike first. It had revealed just how dangerous this war had become. Dax knew they wouldn't have long to rest. The next battle was already coming. The TNS Valor limped back toward the edge of human space, scarred and battered. The engines hummed weakly, running on backup systems. Fires had been put out. The worst damage had been patched. But the ship felt heavier now, like it carried the weight of every life lost in the strike. Captain Dax Mercer stood on the command deck, staring at the empty space ahead. The mission had succeeded, but at a terrible cost. 2 ships destroyed, brave men and women gone. And now, they were no closer to peace. Commander Lee stepped beside him, breaking the silence. Admiral Reeve is waiting on a secure channel. Dax gave a nod. Put him through. The Admiral appeared on the main screen. His face showed more than just exhaustion. It showed something darker, fear. You hit them hard, Captain, Reeve said. We've confirmed the station's destruction. Their supply lines are in chaos. But it's not enough, is it? Dax asked quietly. Reeve sighed. No, they're angry now. Our scouts report their main fleet is moving toward Seoul. This time, they're bringing everything they have. Dax felt his throat tighten. The heart of humanity, the Earth itself, was about to face the full strength of the Dominion. How long do we have? Dax asked. 2 days at most, Reeve replied. We're gathering every ship we have. You'll meet the fleet at Seoul. Dax nodded. We'll be there. Reeve leaned in. Dax, if we lose Earth, we lose everything. This is the final stand. The screen went dark. Later, Dax stood in the officer's lounge, staring out at the stars. He could feel the eyes of his crew on him. They were waiting for answers, waiting for hope. Dax turned to face them. We did what we set out to do, he said. We hit them where it hurt. But the war isn't over. The Dominion is coming for Earth. We leave at first light. The room stayed quiet. No one cheered. No one clapped. But they all stood a little taller, ready to follow their captain again, no matter the cost. That night, Dax walked the halls of the ship alone. He passed closed doors, dim lights, and silent corridors. Everyone was resting, preparing for the final fight. He stopped at the observation deck and leaned against the glass. His reflection stared back at him. Tired eyes, worn face, the weight of command etched into every line. Captain Mercer. Dax turned. It was Commander Lee. She walked up beside him, silent for a moment before speaking again. We've come a long way, sir, she said softly. Dax nodded. Too far to turn back now. Lee looked down, her voice lower. Do you think we can win? Dax didn't answer right away. He thought about all they had lost, about Earth waiting for them, about the Virexi, who wouldn't stop until humanity was gone. I don't know, he admitted, but I do know we can't afford to lose. Lee nodded. Then we won't. They stood there in silence, 2 soldiers facing the unknown. Hours later, the Valor prepared for its final jump. The crew moved with quiet determination. They knew what waited for them on the other side. Dax stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the navigation display. The fleet was already gathering at Seoul, humanity's last stand. Before giving the order, Dax opened a secure channel to the Virexi Dominion. One last attempt, even if it was pointless. High Lord Zorik Vel appeared on the screen. His cold, yellow eyes stared back at Dax. "You return to speak terms?" Zorik asked. Dax shook his head. "No, I came to ask why." Zorik tilted his head. "Why what? Why this war? Dax Pesset. You could have left us alone. We never asked for this." Zorik's voice remained steady. "You spread too fast. You threaten the balance. We have kept peace in this galaxy for centuries. You upset that peace." Dax leaned forward. "We just wanted a future." Zorik narrowed his eyes. "And we are here to take it from you." Dax's jaw tightened. "You'll have to go through all of us first." Zorik gave a small, almost respectful nod. "So be it." The screen went dark. Dax turned to his crew. "Take us home." The Valor's engines roared to life. The stars stretched into long lines as the ship jumped towards Sol, where the final battle waited. Dax knew they stood at the edge of extinction. But he also knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly. The TNS Valor burst out of fold space on the edge of the Sol system. What lay before Captain Dax Mercer stole his breath. The sky was filled with ships. Hundreds of Terran warships hovered in tight formations, guarding Earth like a wall of steel. Battleships, carriers, cruisers, and fighters stretched from the orbit of Mars to the dark edges of Jupiter's moons. Humanity had gathered every ship that could still fly. It was a fleet built out of desperation, but it stood ready. Dax's ship slipped into formation near the front line. The fleet's command ship, TNS Eternity, hailed them immediately. Admiral Reeves' face filled the screen once again. "Good to see you alive, Captain," Reeves said. "You're just in time. The Virexi are coming." Dax leaned forward. "How far out?" Reeves' face hardened. "Minutes." The screen cut off. The wait was over. On the main display, the Virexi fleet arrived. They came like a tidal wave. Their warships stretched as far as the eye could see. Hundreds of massive carriers and destroyers filled the space between Pluto and Neptune, engines glowing blue, weapons fully charged. The Virexi had brought their full strength. A cold silence filled the Valor's bridge. Every crew member stood at their post, hands tight on their controls, waiting for the storm to hit. Dax broke the silence. His voice was low, steady. "We hold here. We don't let them past us." The first wave came fast. Virexi fighters swarmed ahead of the main fleet, streaking toward the human line like a cloud of black arrows. Human fighters launched to meet them, filling the empty space with fire and death. Explosions flashed across the darkness. Ships spun and burned. The Valor shook under heavy fire as enemy bombers targeted the human front line. Dax held onto the console as the ship's shields flared. "Return fire," Dax ordered. "Focus on their lead destroyers." The Valor's heavy cannons roared. Plasma bolts ripped into Virexi ships, tearing them apart. Nearby, human warships joined in, blasting the enemy with everything they had. But the Virexi kept coming. The main enemy fleet pushed forward, overwhelming the front line. Human ships fell one by one. The TNS Vanguard exploded off the Valor's starboard side, breaking apart in a wave of fire. Dax clenched his fists. They were losing ground. Admiral Reeves' voice came through the fleet-wide channel. "All ships fall back toward Earth. Prepare for final defense." Dax turned to Lee. "We can't let them close in on the planet." Lee nodded. "What's the play?" Dax looked at the tactical map. He saw Zorik's flagship at the center of the Virexi fleet. A massive warship, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. If they could take it out, the enemy might break. Dax made his choice. "We go for their flagship," he said. "We punch through their center." Lee's eyes widened. "It's suicide." Dax gave a grim smile. "It worked once before." Dax opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Captain Mercer. All ships able to move, follow me. We hit their center. We take out their leader. This is our shot." The Valor surged forward. A dozen ships followed. It was a small force, but it was enough. They charged through the burning wreckage, heading straight for Zorik's flagship. Virexi ships closed in from all sides. The Valor took hit after hit. Systems flickered. Fires sparked across the deck. "Shields at 20%. Lee shouted. "Keep going." Dax yelled back. They broke through the enemy wall and faced the massive Virexi flagship. It loomed ahead like a floating fortress. "Target their engines." Dax ordered. All weapons, fire. The Valor unleashed everything. Plasma bolt, missile, railgun. The flagship's shields flared but held. More enemy ships closed in. The Valor was surrounded. Dax knew they had one chance left. He turned to Lee. Prepare the last of our torpedoes. Load them into the forward tubes. Lee nodded. Loaded and ready. Dax opened one last channel to Admiral Reeve. We're going to ram the flagship. Detonate our torpedoes from inside. If we fail, you finish this. Reeve's face appeared for the final time. He gave a slow nod. Good luck, Captain. You've done more than anyone could have asked. Dax turned to his crew. His voice was steady and proud. It's been an honor. The crew stood tall, ready to follow their captain to the end. The Valor surged forward, engines burning hot. Enemy fire ripped through its hull, tearing it apart piece by piece. But Dax didn't stop. He drove the ship straight into the side of the Virexi flagship. The impact shook the ship to its core. Alarms blared. Sparks flew. Dax stood tall, his hand hovering over the torpedo trigger. Now, he whispered. He pressed the button. The explosion lit up the void. The Valor disappeared in a wave of fire, tearing through the heart of the Virexi flagship. The enemy ship split apart, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Across the battlefield, the Virexi forces began to break. Their formation collapsed. Human ships pushed forward, driving the enemy back. The Virexi had lost their leader. Their will to fight shattered. Humanity had held the line. In the end, there was silence. The wreckage of both fleets drifted through space. Fires burned in the dark. Earth, bruised but standing, remained untouched. The cost had been terrible, but humanity had survived. The battlefield over Earth was silent now. Ships, broken, burning, and drifting, filled the black sky like scattered bones. The great fleets of humanity and the Virexi had clashed here, and both had paid a heavy price. But humanity still stood. Aboard the TNS Eternity, Admiral Reeve watched the scattered remains of the Virexi fleet flee into deep space. His face was pale, lined with loss. Yet in his eyes there was something else, relief. He knew who had made this victory possible. Recovery operations began at once. Shuttles moved between wrecked ships, searching for survivors. Fires were put out. Engineers worked around the clock to keep what was left of the fleet running. But the one ship no one could find was the TNS Valor. Its last act had destroyed the Virexi flagship, turning both ships into wreckage spread across the void. There had been no distress signals, no life signs. The Valor was gone. 3 days later, the surviving fleet returned to Earth orbit. Cities around the world stood still as news of the victory spread. People gathered in streets and homes, watching broadcasts, waiting to hear the names of the heroes who had given their lives. In the fleet's command hall aboard the Eternity, Admiral Reeve stood before hundreds of soldiers, pilots, and officers. The room was quiet. Every face carried the weight of the war. Reeve took a deep breath and spoke. We have paid in blood. We have lost brothers and sisters. We have stood on the edge of extinction. But we are still here. Humanity lives. He paused, then added quietly, We live because of those who gave everything. He turned toward the large display behind him. A single name appeared. Captain Dax Mercer, TNS Valor. The room stood in silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Every person in that room knew what Dax had done. He had led them to the end. He had carried the weight of every life. And in the end, he had given his own. Somewhere beyond the wreckage fields, among the debris of shattered ships, a lone escape pod floated silently in the dark. Inside, a weak signal blinked. Faint, almost lost, but it was still alive. Down on Earth, in the capital city of New Alexandria, a memorial wall had already begun to rise. Names were being carved into smooth black stone. Families gathered, laying flowers and standing in silence. Lee, now Captain Lee, stood among them. She had taken command of the fleet's remaining ships. The war had left her with scars she would carry forever. But she knew her duty was not over. She placed her hand on the wall, on Dax's name, and whispered softly, We'll keep fighting. We'll protect them. I promise. High above Earth, The stars shined brightly once more. Ships moved slowly across the sky, rebuilding, recovering, preparing for whatever came next. The war with the Virexi was not over. Not yet. But humanity had earned something greater than victory. They had earned their place in the galaxy. And no one, not even the Virexi Dominion, would ever forget the name of humanity again.